welcome to How to Make Lazy Man's Pizza. This pizza can be made in about 2 or 3 hours and it requires minimal effort. So the items that we'll need a large mixing bowl, 2 cups of warm water. I'm going to pour that straight into the bowl. For the mixing cup, I like one where you could see the measurement from the aerial view. We're going to use some yeast. You got your rolling pins. This is not a requirement. You could always use a fork to poke down any air holes. Pizza cutter and your whatever this thing is. I use 2 types of flour, but you can just use basic white flour. I do happen to grind my own wheat, and this just gives it a little extra diversity in the taste. You'll need a couple of these baking sheets with the perforated holes, depending on how much pizza you want to make. So I just use 2 cups of water, which will make 2 pizzas. You'll need a couple of cutting boards that approximate the size of your baking disc. And then lastly, you'll need your toppings. I always do a traditional sauce and a pesto. For the traditional sauce, you could use any flavor of tomato sauce you want. Just experiment and see what you like. The official pizza sauce doesn't taste superior in any way. Italian seasoning, and then if you desire, crushed red peppers. And then what I don't have today is cilantro. Is really the secret ingredient. You're just going to cut up some cilantro and put it all over the pizza. Whatever types of cheese you want and whatever toppings you want. Pepperoni. I always use banana peppers on one of the pizzas. So first thing we're going to do is add our yeast. The only thing I measure in this process is the water, because I know I want 2 pizzas that are always the same size. So I put enough yeast to just cover the top of the water. Just leave it in there for about 30 seconds to a minute and you will begin to smell the yeast is operational. One ingredient I did not mention was salt. I don't add salt just yet. Olive oil, honey. We'll edit that in there when we're doing our ingredients. Add some flour. Alright, once I have a soupy type of mixture, I'll add my salt. I'll feed the yeast a little bit of honey and add some olive oil. Olive oil is not going to make or break your pizza, so you don't necessarily need this. I think it adds a little bit of extra authentic taste. We'll mix that in there. Continue mixing your dough until it sticks together. So it should come off of the side of the bowl and it should all be in one clump essentially. There was no kneading involved. That took less than 5 minutes. I literally just mixed it up with the spatula, folding it over itself until I got one solid mass. Now we're going to cover this up with a towel and we'll wait about 30 minutes to let our dough start rising. Alright, so 30 minutes has elapsed and you can see that the dough has begun to expand. So it will essentially double in size, and you want to just fold it over north, south, east, and west. Set it back into our ball and repeat that process over the course of a couple hours, and then we'll be ready to roll it out. Alright, so a couple hours have elapsed. I got busy during that time, so I only folded the dough twice. I normally do it every 30 minutes approximately, but we'll go with this because I'm hungry. So next we're going to take our sifter and fill it with some flour and generously cover the countertop. I'm going to drop the dough. Cut your dough into 2 equal pieces. shape that into a ball and set it aside. And then we'll use our hands at first and just flatten out the first ball of dough. Using a rolling pin, start from the center of the dough, work your way outward in all directions, and we'll get this in as close of a shape to a circle as we can. Poke some holes in it to prevent it from bubbling up and burning. And then if you don't have this tool, you can utilize a fork. And then I just slide the dough onto this disc, and then we'll pop it in the oven at 500 degrees on broil. The key for this is just broil, because the dough is so thin. And while that one's going, we'll work on the next pie.
Go.
Okay, once you see that your crust has the slightest bit of browning, that's when you know it's safe to flip. So just grab it with your hands, flip it over. You'll see the side is still moist. So we want to make this look identical. So we'll pop that back in the oven, and then we'll put our toppings on. So you could see on this dough, it still appears wet, which can throw you off and you can end up burning your dough. So again, you're just going to watch for these indications of browning, and then you know it's ready for your toppings. If you're doing a very thick crust, you would want to put your oven on bake instead of broil, but broil is sufficient for this. You just want to avoid any raw dough in the center. Okay, so I'm going to do traditional sauce on one. Okay, next up I do my crushed red pepper to liking, Italian seasoning. Again, the magic ingredient is cilantro, which I do not have. If you had cilantro, you would put it on at this stage. If you have any meats, such as bacon or pepperoni, I like to do my meats beneath the cheese so it doesn't burn in my pizza oven. At this stage, you could stick it back in the oven on broil and just brown up the top until it looks like a finished pizza. Pull it out and slice it up. So we'll take a look at that point. Your pizzas can be cooked in the oven on broil at 500 degrees. If your top rack is close to the top of the oven, you have to keep a watchful eye on the pizza, or else it will burn quickly. So when I made these, I kept the rack in the center when I was making the dough. That way I didn't burn it. But again, I have an Uni pizza oven. Those things are phenomenal, and that's what I used to finish these off. Again, most people won't have that. Just continue in the oven on broil, and it will still come out the same. I just use the Uni for efficiency. And that's it. Slice it up, serve, and enjoy.